She was already there when I came back from the storeroom. Same chair, third one from the window, the one with the cracked vinyl seat that nobody else picks. A folded cardigan in her lap, pale gray, soft-looking, the kind of thing you'd wear to read in. She wasn't reading. She wasn't doing anything. She had both hands resting on top of the sweater like she was keeping it warm, and she was watching the machines. There were 3 of them running, not hers. Other people's, on-timers, finishing up. The light in the laundromat is that warm fluorescent that hums a little if you stand under it long enough. And the dryers add their low rolling sound. And the rain that night was tapping the front windows in a way that made the whole room feel like it was underwater. She sat in the middle of all of it, perfectly still, like she'd grown out of the floor. It was 12:40 in the morning. My name is Daniel. I'm 36 and I own this place. A small 24-hour laundromat on Hartley Street. 10 machines, 4 fold tables. A vending machine that makes coffee I would not serve to an enemy. I bought it 2 years ago, right after the divorce, with money that was supposed to go toward a house I was no longer going to share with anyone. People thought it was a strange choice. I definitely thought it was a strange choice. But here's the part I didn't say out loud back then. I don't sleep. Haven't slept right in years. Somewhere in the wreckage of my marriage to Claire, the part of my brain that knows how to shut off at night just quietly stopped working, and it never came back. So at 2 in the morning, when most people are unconscious and the rest are pretending to be, I needed somewhere to be. Somewhere with a reason to be awake. The laundromat gave me that. A place that was supposed to be empty was suddenly mine to keep company. I'm not going to tell you the divorce was dramatic. It wasn't. Claire and I didn't scream. We didn't throw anything. We were just 2 people who wanted different futures and got tired of pretending we wanted the same one. She wanted to keep moving. I wanted to stay still long enough to feel like something was solid. There was no villain. That was almost the worst part. You can't be angry at someone for needing a different life than the one you can give them. You can only stand in the kitchen at the end of it and notice how quiet the apartment is now. That's the thing nobody warns you about. It isn't the leaving that gets you. It's the silence that moves in afterward and stays. So I filled the silence with hum. The first few months, I treated the laundromat like a job that happened to never close. I fixed coin slots. I scraped gum off the underside of the fold tables, which is a special kind of humbling. I learned which machines run cold no matter what the dial says, and I taped little handwritten notes to them. I changed the bulbs the day they flickered instead of waiting. I kept the floor cleaner than it needed to be, and slowly, without deciding to, I started to love the night version of the place more than the day version. The day version belongs to everyone. Tired parents with overflowing baskets. College kids doing a semester of laundry in one apocalyptic load. The day version is loud and fast and a little stressful, and I'm just the guy who makes change. The night version is different. The night version has regulars. There's an old man named Walter who comes Tuesdays around 11 and reads paperback westerns and never says more than 4 words to me, and the 4 words are always cold one out there. There's a nurse Priya coming off shift who folds scrubs while staring at nothing. Halfway between work and sleep, somewhere neither of us could name. There's a guy who I'm pretty sure is between apartments, who runs one small load and then sits very straight in the corner like he's waiting for someone to ask him to leave. I never do. There's room in here. That's the whole point of the place. I learned a long time ago that you don't ask people why they're awake at 3 in the morning. Awake at 3 people are awake for a reason, and the reason is rarely something they want to explain to a man holding a roll of quarters. You let them have the light and the warmth and the hum, and you mind your own business. And that is its own kind of kindness, maybe the only kind I had left to give back then. And then, about 2 months before that rainy night, she started coming. I don't remember the exact first time, which bothers me because I remember almost everything about her now, but it was sometime in early spring. She came in around midnight, looked around once, slow, like she was checking the room against a memory of it. Then she sat down, 3rd chair from the window, cardigan in her lap, and she didn't run a machine. I waited for her too. People sit for a minute sometimes, catching their breath, gathering themselves. I figured she was working up to a load. I went back to wiping down the counter, gave her some privacy, and when I looked up 20 minutes later, she was still just sitting there. The folded sweater on her knees, watching the dryers turn the way other people watch a fire. She left before dawn. I didn't see her go. The next night she came back, and she did the same thing, and the night after that. Here's what I want you to understand. A woman who comes into a laundromat at midnight and never does laundry is, on paper, a strange thing. My brain ran through the obvious explanations the way anybody's would. She's waiting for someone. She lives somewhere bad and needs somewhere safe. She's lonely. She's lost. I had a dozen stories and not one of them fit, because none of them explained the cardigan. She never washed it. She never put it in a basket. She held it. Both hands. Like it was the reason she'd come, and not just something she happened to be carrying. She was, I'd guess, in her early 40s. Dark hair, going a little silver at the temples, and she didn't dye it, which I noticed and respected, the way you notice anything true in a world full of people performing. She wore good plain clothes. She had a stillness to her that was not the same as calm. I knew that kind of still. I'd worn it myself, standing in a quiet kitchen. It's the stillness of someone holding something very heavy and not wanting you to see the strain. She never told me her name. I never asked. That was the rule I made. Silently, the second or third night, I would not ask her anything. Not why she came, not what the sweater was, not whether she was all right. Because I knew, the way you know things at 1 in the morning, that if I asked, she would stop coming. Whatever this was, it only worked because nobody was making her explain it. I'd built a whole place out of not asking people why they were awake. She was just one more person who needed the light. The fact that she needed it more than most was not my business to pry open. So we developed a routine without ever agreeing to one. She'd come in around midnight. I'd give her a nod, the same small nod I gave everyone, nothing more, and she'd give me a nod back, and that was the entire transaction. Then she'd sit. I'd do whatever needed doing, or pretend to, and the machines would hum and the rain would come or it wouldn't, and the radio behind my counter would play low. And we'd be 2 people in a bright room in the middle of the night, not talking, not alone. I started looking forward to it. I'm not proud of how much. It's a strange thing to admit. I knew nothing about this woman. I didn't know her name or her job or whether she had anyone in the world. But she was the only fixed point in my nights, and my nights were most of my life by then. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely, and I'd been failing to tell those 2 things apart for 2 years. With her in the room, somehow I stopped failing. She wasn't there for me. I knew that. She'd have come whether I existed or not. But she came and I was there, and for a few hours we shared the same square of warm light, and that turned out to be enough to take the edge off, something I'd stopped expecting to feel better. I started keeping the radio on a quieter station for her. I told myself it was for everyone. It wasn't. I started wiping down the chair before midnight, third from the window, told myself I was just cleaning. I wasn't. And every single night, no matter how long she stayed, she was gone before the sky went gray. I'd blink or go check a machine or step into the back for 30 seconds, and when I came out the chair would be empty and the door would be settling shut, and she'd be somewhere out on Hartley Street, walking into the part of the morning I never got to see. She left no trace, no basket, no quarters in the slot. Just the faint warmth of where she'd been sitting, fading out of the vinyl, and the smell of her, which I won't try to describe except to say it was clean and a little like cedar, and it stayed in the room maybe 10 minutes after she left. This went on for weeks. I want to be honest about how content I was with it. People want stories to move. They want the man to walk over and say something clever and change everything. But I didn't want to change it. I'd already lost a whole life by reaching for more than someone was willing to give. I wasn't going to make that woman feel cornered in the one place she'd chosen to be. The not asking was the gift. The silence was the whole arrangement. I'd rather have her there, a stranger, forever, than scare her off by needing her to be anything else. And maybe that's where it would have stayed. 2 people and a hum. A man who didn't ask, a woman who didn't tell. Except for the rain. That night, the one I started with, it was coming down hard. The kind that floods the gutters on Hartley Street and turns the windows into running glass. She'd come in soaked at the shoulders, dark patches on that good plain coat, and she'd sat down with the cardigan held to her chest, and I'd watched her, over the next hour, get cold. The radiator in here is old and the rain pulls the heat right out of the room. She didn't complain, she wouldn't. But I saw her hands tighten on the sweater, and I saw her shoulders draw in, just slightly. And I knew that particular small-braced posture, because I'd held it myself 100 times in a quiet kitchen, telling myself I was fine. The coffee machine makes terrible coffee, I've said that. But terrible coffee is hot. I don't fully know why I did it that night, and not any of the nights before. Maybe because the rain made the room feel even smaller. Maybe because she looked colder than usual. Maybe I'd just spent 2 months keeping a careful distance, and something in me, that night, got tired of being careful. I put 2 quarters in the machine. I let it cough out a cup. I added the little stir of fake creamer because I'd noticed, weeks ago, that she watched the other customers add it and never took any herself, which told me she might want it, the way people deny themselves small comforts when they've decided they don't deserve them. I don't know how I knew that about her. I just did. Then I carried it over, and here is the thing I'd promised myself I would never do. I almost said something, some line about the cold, the weather, the rain, an opening of some kind, a door I could leave standing ajar. I didn't use it. I just set the cup down on the little folding table next to her chair, gently, so the sound was soft, and I didn't look at her too long, and I turned around and walked back to my counter like it was nothing. Like I did it every night. I didn't make it a moment. The whole arrangement we had, the entire careful thing, depended on me not making it a moment. Behind me I heard the machines hum, the rain on the glass, and nothing else. I didn't turn around. I told myself I'd gone too far. I'd broken the rule, the no-contact rule, the one that kept her coming. And I braced for the sound of the chair scraping back, and the door swinging shut and her walking out into the rain, to never come back, and I'd have deserved it. I stood at my counter and stared at a stain on the laminate and waited for the cost of caring out loud. The chair didn't scrape. After a long minute, I heard the smallest sound, a cup being lifted, the soft give of someone settling deeper into a seat instead of standing up to leave. I risked one glance, just one, in the dark reflection of the front window where I could see her without turning my head. She had the coffee in both hands now, the cardigan still in her lap, under her wrists, and she was holding the cup the exact way she held the sweater. Like it mattered, like it was keeping her warm in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. She didn't say thank you. I didn't need her to. We weren't those people yet. But she stayed. She stayed past one. Past the point where she usually started to gather that stillness around herself in a way that meant she'd be leaving soon. She stayed while the rain eased to a drizzle, and the last of the other customers' dryers buzzed and went quiet, until it was just the two of us in the hum, and one terrible cup of coffee, growing slowly less terrible in her hands. She stayed longer than she had any night before, and I stood at my counter pretending to do paperwork, feeling something I hadn't felt in 2 years, which was the particular warmth of having done one small thing right for another human being, and watched them take it. Eventually she left. Before dawn, like always. I went into the back for less than a minute, and when I came out the chair was empty and the door was just settling shut. But the coffee cup was on the table. Empty. Set down neat, square to the edge, the way you leave something when you want the person to know you're grateful, and you don't have the words. I picked it up. I stood there in the hum with an empty paper cup in my hand at almost 3 in the morning, and I realized I had crossed a line I could not uncross. For 2 months she had been a stranger, I protected by leaving alone. And now, with one cup of bad coffee, I'd asked a question without saying a word. The question was simple. Who was she? Why did she come here, night after night, to a laundromat where she never washed a single thing, holding a sweater she never let out of her hands, leaving before the sun could find her? I didn't have the answer. I wouldn't for a long time. But she'd come back the next night. I was almost certain of it now, and somewhere between the rain and the coffee and the chair that didn't scrape, the careful, quiet, untouchable thing we'd built had changed into something I was going to have to be brave about. Because you can keep a stranger forever. You cannot keep a person you've started to know and stay a stranger to them. One of those has to give. I locked up at 6 and walked home through the wet gray streets, and for the first time in 2 years, I was thinking about midnight before I'd even reached my own front door. I didn't sleep that day either. But it was a different kind of not sleeping. For 2 years, the hours between morning and midnight had been something to get through, dead weight. I'd lie on top of the covers, with my eyes open and watch the light move across the ceiling, and feel time pass like water down a drain. That afternoon, after the coffee and the chair that didn't scrape, I lay there and counted forward instead of just lying still. 12 hours until I opened. 14 until midnight, and I caught myself doing the math, and I thought, you idiot, you don't even know her name. It didn't matter. The counting had started. You can't make it stop once it starts. She came back that night. Of course she did. A little after midnight, the bell over the door, the soft scuff of her shoes on the floor, and she looked around the room once the way she always did, slow, checking it against something. Then she came to the third chair from the window. I'd wiped it down at 11. I'd stopped pretending to myself about why. She sat down with the cardigan in her lap, both hands resting on top of it the way they always did. And I made her a coffee. I didn't ask. I didn't announce it. I just did it the way I'd done it in the rain. 2 quarters, the cough of the machine, the little stir of fake creamer she'd never take for herself. And I carried it over and set it on the folding table, soft, square to the edge. Then I went back to my counter. I didn't look to see if she drank it. She drank it. I knew because the cup was empty when she left. That became the shape of the next few weeks. I want to be careful describing it, because it was almost nothing, and almost nothing was the entire point. She'd come around midnight, I'd make the coffee. She'd hold it the way she held the sweater, like both of them were keeping her warm, in some way the radiator couldn't reach. We didn't speak, we barely looked at each other, and somehow it became the most reliable conversation I'd had in years. People think intimacy is a thing you say out loud. It isn't, always. Sometimes it's two people agreeing without a single word to share the same square of light and not require anything else of each other. I read once that the deepest closeness can grow in the silence between people who have decided they are safe. I didn't read that later, but I felt it that spring, standing at my counter at 1 in the morning, learning a person by the way she held a paper cup. There was the radio. This is the part that still makes me smile. The radio behind my counter is old, a little plastic thing that gets maybe 4 stations clearly, and for 2 years, I'd left it on whatever it landed on, talk or classic rock, or that late-night jazz station that fades in and out depending on the weather. Background noise. Something to make the hum less total. I never thought about it. She thought about it. The 3rd or 4th night of the coffee, I had the talk station on. 2 men arguing about a baseball trade at 1 in the morning, like the world depended on it. And I noticed her shift in the chair. Just slightly. A small drawing in. She would never say anything, but I saw her shoulders set the way mine set when something grates, so I changed it. Reached over and turned the dial until I found the jazz station, low piano, a brush on a snare, somebody singing soft about a town they used to live in. And I watched her shoulders come down. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her, but something had been negotiated. After that it became a thing we did. Not out loud, never out loud. I'd put on a station, and if it was wrong, I'd feel it in the room, a tightness, and I'd find something else. Some nights she wanted the jazz. Some nights when the rain was hard, she wanted the static-laced classical station, the one that sounded like it was coming from very far away. One night I put on an old soul record by accident, fishing for the jazz, and she went so still that I left it there the whole night. And when she finally got up to leave, she paused by the door for half a second longer than usual, like the song had caught on something in her, and she had to wait for it to let go. We never named the station. We never named anything. But every night in that small wordless way we built it together. The light, the hum, the right song. Our radio station that we never called anything at all. It was the only place in my life where I felt like I was getting something right. And the strange thing was that getting it right meant doing almost nothing. Just listening. Just paying enough attention to a person to know which sound would let her rest. There were near misses. I'd be lying if I said there weren't. One night a machine on the far wall threw a fit, banging on its off-balance cycle the way they do, and we both turned to look at it at the same time, and our eyes met in the middle of the room. Just for a second. She had this look like she was about to say something dry about it. The corner of her mouth moved, and I felt the whole careful thing tilt, felt a sentence rise up in me, and I almost let it out. Then the machine settled, and the moment closed, and we both looked away, and the silence came back like water filling in behind a stone. I lay awake that whole day thinking about the corner of her mouth. Another night I misread her completely. She'd come in looking worn down, more than usual, her face drawn, and she sat and didn't move for a long time, and I decided she was upset, and I almost went over. I had a whole thing planned. "Are you all right?" The 4 worst words I could have said. I got 2 steps from my counter before I stopped, because I realized she wasn't upset. She was just tired, the ordinary kind of tired, and going over there would have made her feel watched, studied, like a problem I'd noticed. So I turned the 2 steps into a trip to the fold table, straightened some flyers nobody reads, and went back. She never knew. That was the closest I came to ruining it. The urge to help is a kind of vanity sometimes. It took me a while to learn the difference between caring about someone and needing them to know you care. So I kept the careful distance, the coffee, the radio, the wipe chair, the nod, and it held. In the daylight, my life was the daylight version of itself, which is to say my sister called. Mara is 29, 7 years younger than me, and she has spent most of her life being the brave one. She's the one who moved to the city at 19 with 2 suitcases. She's the one who quit the safe job to do the thing she actually wanted. When our parents split, she was the one who held everybody's hand and made the phone calls. She is, by every visible measure, fearless. So I want you to understand how strange it was, that spring, to hear my fearless little sister terrified of a good man. His name, he's 31, an architect, kind in the specific way that doesn't perform. He fixes things at her apartment without being asked. He remembers the names of her co-workers. He'd proposed to her in February, no big production, just the 2 of them on a Sunday, and she'd said yes, and she'd called me crying, and I thought they were happy tears. They were, and they weren't. Because over the next couple of months, the closer the wedding got, the worse she got. She'd call me on her lunch break, walking fast on a loud street, and the calls were always about something small. The venue deposit, his mother's opinion on flowers, a registry item that felt like too much. But underneath the small thing, there was always the same big thing, and I could hear it, the way you hear a pipe knocking behind a wall. "I don't know if I'm doing this for the right reasons," she said one afternoon. I had the phone tucked against my shoulder, restocking the change machine. "What if I'm just doing it because he's good? Like, because it would be insane not to." "Is that the worst reason you can think of?" I said. "That he's good?" "Don't make it sound simple." "I'm not. I'm asking." She went quiet. I could hear traffic, a bus pulling away, the sound of her shoes hitting the pavement faster than a person walks when they're calm. Then she said, "When you and Claire were ending it, did you know? Like before you knew? Could you feel it coming?" That stopped me. "Nobody asked me about Claire. I've made sure of that." "Yeah," I said. "I could feel it coming for about a year before either of us said anything." "So feelings can warn you. Or they can lie to you," I said. "I felt a lot of things at the end that weren't true. Fear talks loud, Mar. It doesn't always tell the truth. It just talks loud." She didn't answer for a second. "That's annoyingly wise," she said. "Are you sleeping yet?" "No." "Daniel." "I'm fine. Go back to work." I hung up and stood there in the daylight version of my life, holding rolls of quarters, thinking about my sister. Here was the thing I couldn't say to her, because I didn't have the right to. Mara wasn't afraid Sam was the wrong man. She was afraid he was the right one, afraid of the size of it. Afraid that if she let herself walk all the way in, she'd have something she couldn't bear to lose. And the safest thing, the thing some part of her wanted, was to find a reason to stay near the door. I knew that fear. I knew it from the inside. It had cost me a marriage to learn it, and even after the cost, I hadn't gotten any better at the lesson. I just hadn't admitted yet that I knew it, because I was living in it too, every single night, in a bright room, careful not to say a word to a woman whose name I wouldn't let myself ask. I read later that there's an actual term for the fear of commitment, that for some people the closeness itself sets off the alarm. The very thing they want becomes the thing they run from. I didn't have the word for it then. I just had my sister on a loud street, and my own quiet room, and the strange feeling that we were both standing in the same doorway from opposite sides of it. That night I went back to the laundromat and made the coffee and put on the jazz and stood at my counter, and I watched the woman in the third chair hold her sweater, and for the first time I let myself wonder, really wonder, what was in it. Not who she was, what she was holding. Because I'd started to understand that the sweater wasn't a habit, it was a hand she was holding on to. And nobody holds a hand that tight unless the other person is already gone. I didn't ask, but I wondered, is how the wall starts to come down one quiet brick at a time. Then came the night it changed. It was late, well past 1. The radio had stopped early and left the streets shining, and the room was warm, for once, the old radiator finally earning its keep, and the soul station was on low, the one she liked. There were no other customers, just us. She had her coffee half gone and the cardigan in her lap, and I was at my counter not even pretending to do anything anymore, just listening to the music and the hum, and the small sounds of her breathing across the room. And one of the bulbs over her chair started to go. It flickered, the way they do right before they die, a faint stutter of light, and I came around the counter with a fresh bulb, because that's the kind of thing I fix the second it happens, I always have. I dragged the little step stool over. I reached up, and I was standing maybe 3 feet from her, closer than I'd been in weeks, close enough to smell the cedar, and I was unscrewing the bulb when she spoke. "My mother used to do that," she said, the second a light went out. "Couldn't stand it half dark." I froze with the bulb in my hand. It was the first thing she'd ever said to me. 2 months, maybe more, and her voice was lower than I'd imagined, a little rough, like a voice that hadn't been used much that day. I didn't turn around right away. I was afraid that if I turned around too fast I'd break it, the way you don't make a sudden move toward a bird that's landed close. "Drove my father crazy," she said. "He'd just sit in the dark. She'd be up on a chair before the room had finished dimming." I screwed the new bulb in. The light steadied, warm and full, and the half-dark went away, and I stepped down off the stool and I made myself turn around slow and easy. Like it was nothing, like she talked to me every night. "Sounds like a good way to be," I said. She looked at me. Really looked for the first time, not the glancing thing in the reflection, but straight on, and her eyes were dark and tired, and there was something in them I couldn't read yet, something held very carefully behind the tiredness. The coffee was warm in her hands. The radio played low, The whole room seemed to be holding its breath along with me. "Used to be," she said. And there it was. The whole weight of it in 2 words. Used to be. Past tense. A door opening just an inch onto a room I hadn't been allowed into. A room with someone in it who wasn't there anymore. She didn't say more. She looked back down at her coffee, and her hands tightened on the cup, and I understood that she'd given me something and that it had cost her, and that the worst thing I could do, the absolute worst, would be to reach for more of it now. So I held still and let the silence be gentle. "I'm Daniel," I said. Just my name, set down soft on the table between us, square to the edge, the way I set the coffee. No question, nothing she had to answer. She was quiet for a long moment. The Soul Station played on, somebody singing about a light left on in a window. And then, so quietly I almost missed it under the hum, she told me her name for the first time, and the careful, wordless, untouchable thing we'd built for 2 months turned, in a single breath, into something neither of us could pretend was nothing anymore. Vivian. That was her name. She'd said it like it cost her something to spend, and then she'd looked back down at her coffee. And I'd held it the way you hold a coin somebody gives you when they don't have much. Careful. Like dropping it would be a kind of disrespect. I didn't say it back to her that night. I wanted to. The whole drive home it sat in my mouth, but I'd learned by then that the fastest way to lose a thing with her was to grab at it, so I let it be. I just had it now. A name where there'd been a shape in the 3rd chair. And in the morning, lying on top of the covers, watching the same light cross the same ceiling, I said it out loud to the empty room once, just to hear it. The room didn't answer the way it never had. But something had changed in it anyway. After that, the walls came down slow. A brick at a time, like I said, never a flood. She didn't tell me her life. That's not how she was. She let it leak, a word here, a piece there. I'd be wiping a machine, and she'd say something small and offhand, not looking at me, and I learned to keep wiping, keep my eyes down, because the second she felt watch, the door would swing shut again. That's how I learned she had a brother. Older, they didn't talk much. That's how I learned she'd grown up about an hour north, in a town she called by name like it owed her money, and that she'd left at 18 and never really gone back. That's how I learned the cardigan had been worn through at one elbow, and somebody had darned it a long time ago, with thread that almost matched but not quite, and she touched that spot sometimes without knowing she was doing it. Her thumb would find the seam and rub it the way you rub a worry stone. I never said I noticed, but I noticed everything. One night, she said, out of nowhere, in the middle of a long quiet, she had hands like mine, bigger, but the same shape, and she held up her own hand in the fluorescent light and looked at it like it belonged to someone else. Then she put it back in her lap on top of the sweater, and we didn't talk about it, and I made myself not ask the question sitting right there on the table between us. Who had hands like yours? I knew who. I think I'd known for a while. But knowing and being told are 2 different rooms, and she hadn't opened the second one yet, and it wasn't mine to open for her. I read later that grief like that has a name. Not the clean kind. The kind that doesn't close. The kind that stays open because the person is gone, but the missing isn't finished. The missing just goes on and on with nowhere to land. She was carrying one of those. You could see it in how she held the sweater. You don't hold a thing that tight if the holding is over. So that was the spring, her leaking a life into the room 1 word at a time. Me, learning to catch the words without reaching for them. And for a few weeks in the dark, it was almost enough to make me forget that the building it was happening in didn't belong to me. Then daylight did what daylight does. It came in the form of an envelope. Thick paper, my name typed wrong, the management company that owned the block. I knew before I opened it. You always know, the rent on the storefront was going up. Not a little, a number that made me sit down on the folding chair behind my counter and read it twice, and then a 3rd time like the digits might rearrange themselves into something I could survive. My lease was up in the fall. They wanted the new number, or they wanted me gone so they could put in something that made more per square foot than a man selling wash cycles for 2 quarters at a time. I'm not going to pretend the laundromat was a gold mine. It wasn't. It made enough. It made enough for one quiet man with no one to feed but himself and a lot of dark hours to fill. It had never been about the money. After Claire, after the house, after the version of my life that ended, this room was the thing I'd built back from nothing, the one place where the hum told me everything was still running, still warm, still mine. I'd poured 2 years of not sleeping into it, and a company in an office I'd never see had decided what it was worth, and it was worth less than whatever came next. I sat with that envelope for a long time. The machines ran. The room hummed like it always did, like nothing was wrong, like it didn't know. There's a word for what a place can be to a person. The bond you build to a piece of the world until the place is holding something of you, until losing it would be losing a part of yourself you can't get back any other way. I didn't have the word then. I just had the feeling sitting there that they weren't taking a business off me. They were taking the only room where I still knew who I was. And then I thought about her, about midnight, about what I'd say when she came through the door and sat down in the third chair and held out her hands for a coffee in a place that was already, on paper, half gone. I didn't tell her that night. I made the coffee. I put on the jazz. I stood at my counter with the envelope folded small in my back pocket like a stone, and I let her have one more ordinary midnight before the daylight reached in and touched the one thing in both our lives that the daylight hadn't ruined yet. Because here's what I'd started to understand. This room wasn't just mine anymore. Somewhere in the last 2 months it had quietly become ours, and losing it wouldn't be one loss. It would be two, and one of them belonged to a woman I didn't have the right to lose anything with yet. The daylight wasn't done. Mara called the next afternoon. I knew from the first word it was bad. Her voice was too level. My sister gets calm the way other people get loud. The calmer Mara sounds, the closer she is to the edge. "I think I'm going to call it off," she said. I set down the roll of quarters I was holding. "Okay," I said, "tell me." "There's nothing to tell. That's the problem. He didn't do a single thing wrong. He's perfect. He's so perfect I can't breathe." She laughed, and it wasn't a laugh. His mother sent over the seating chart, and Daniel, I looked at it, and I felt like the walls came in, and I thought, I can't sign up for 40 years of this. "Of what?" I said. "Of seating charts." "Of being known," she said, and then she stopped because she heard it too. We both heard it. The real thing said out loud by accident the way the real thing always comes out. I stood there in my empty laundromat with the phone against my shoulder and the envelope in my pocket and my fearless little sister breaking on the other end of the line, and for a second I couldn't say anything at all, because she'd just described me, to the letter. She'd just held up a mirror and there I was in it, standing in a bright room at midnight, careful, guarded, making coffee for a woman whose name I'd waited 2 months to be given, terrified of the exact thing I wanted. "Mar," I said, "can I ask you something and you don't have to answer?" "What?" "Is Sam wrong for you, honestly? Is there one real thing wrong with him?" She was quiet. I could hear her breath. "No," she said finally, very small. "No. He's the best person I've ever known." "Then it's not him you're running from." "Don't. It's the size of it. It's having something you can't stand to lose." The words came out of me and I realized I wasn't talking to her anymore, not only her. "You found something real and now you're looking for the door, because the door feels safer than the room. I know that feeling, Mara. I know it better than anybody you can call." The line went silent. Then she said, in a voice I hadn't heard from her since we were kids, "How do you make it stop?" "I don't know," I said. And that was the truth, and it cost me. I'm 36 and I still haven't figured it out. I just know which side of the door I've been living on. And I know it's the wrong side. She didn't say anything for a while. Traffic somewhere behind her, a car horn, her breathing slowing down by degrees. "You should take your own advice," she said. "I know." "No, Daniel, I mean it. Whatever this is, whoever this is." She'd heard something in my voice. She always could. "You've been different on the phone for weeks. You think I can't tell." "Go home," I said. "Go home and look at him and ask yourself what you're actually scared of. And don't call off the best thing in your life because you're a coward about being happy. That's a Reed family special. Trust me. I've got the receipts." She laughed, wet and shaky and real this time. "I hate you." "I know. Go." She went. And I stood there in the hum with 2 envelopes now, in a way. The one in my pocket, and the one she just handed me without meaning to. Because everything I'd said to her, every word, was a thing I'd never once said to myself out loud. And it's a strange and terrible feeling to hear your own wisdom come back at you in your sister's voice and realize you've been spending it on everyone but yourself. That weekend it got worse for Vivian too. I only caught the edge of it, but the edge was enough. She came in late on a Sunday, later than usual, and she sat down hard, and when I brought the coffee her hands weren't steady. I set it down and started to go back to my counter, the way I always did, and she said, "They want me to sell it." I stopped. I didn't know what it was. She didn't say. She was looking at the window, at the rain coming down the glass, and her jaw was tight, and the words came out flat and worn like she'd been arguing them in her head for days. "My brother and his wife. They keep calling. They say it's been long enough." Her thumb found the darned elbow of the sweater and pressed it. "They say I need to let go, move on, be reasonable." She said the word reasonable like it was a slur. Everybody's got an opinion on how long you're allowed to hold on to a thing before it makes them uncomfortable. I came back, not all the way, just to the end of the fold table, close enough to be in it with her, not close enough to crowd. "They mean well," she said, and she didn't believe it. You could hear that she didn't. That's the worst part. They actually think they're helping. They look at me and they see somebody stuck. They don't see. She stopped. Her hand flattened on the sweater. They don't see what I'd be letting go of. To them it's just a thing. You're supposed to be over a thing by now. There's a name for that too. The grief nobody gives you permission to have. The kind the world decides has an expiration date, and once the date passes, everyone wants you to pack it up quietly and stop making them look at it. She was drowning in it. Her own family, standing on the shore, telling her the water wasn't really that deep. I didn't say any of that. I didn't have the right, and anyway it wasn't the moment for words with names on them. "You don't have to let go of anything you're not ready to let go of," I said. She looked at me, tired in a way that went past the hour, worn all the way down. "That's not how it works," she said. "It's how it works in here," I said. And I meant the room. I meant this room, these four warm walls, the only place either of us had where nobody was standing on the shore, telling us we'd grieved long enough. I almost told her then, about the envelope, about the fall, about how the one place that didn't ask her to be reasonable was already, on paper, being taken from both of us. I didn't. I couldn't put that on top of what she was already carrying. Not that night. But I understood something. Watching her hold that sweater in a room I was about to lose. We were the same. We'd both built a small, safe place out of a thing we couldn't bear to let go of. Hers was wool and a scent and a darned elbow. Mine was a hum and a square of light and 2 years of not sleeping. And the world was reaching into both at once, with envelopes and phone calls, telling us the same lie in two different voices, that it was time, that we should move on. That holding on this tight to a place, to a person, to a feeling, was something to be cured of. She left before dawn, like she always did. I watched her go. The bell, the scuff of her shoes, the rain. And I stood there after, in the empty hum, and I thought about Mara on a loud street asking how you make the fear stop. And I thought about Vivian on the shore by herself. And I thought about the folded envelope in my pocket. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt the careful distance I'd built start to feel less like safety, and more like the thing it actually was. A door, with me on the wrong side of it. I couldn't keep doing this. I knew it the way you know weather is coming. I couldn't keep making coffee and saying nothing and pretending that giving someone the quiet was the same as giving them the truth. She'd given me her name. She was leaking me a whole life, a brother, a town, a darned elbow, hands that had a shape she remembered. And every night I took it and gave her a warm drink and my silence back, like silence was a fair trade. It wasn't anymore. It had been for a while. It wasn't now. Because the room was going. And when the room went, the silence would go with it. And if all we'd ever been was two people who shared a square of light, without a single true word, then we'd have nothing left to stand on when the light went out. I didn't want to lose her in the dark. So I made a decision, standing there at dawn with the machines finally quiet. The next time she came in, I wasn't going to wait for her to leak another piece. I was going to do the harder thing, the thing I'd told Mara to do. The thing I hadn't done in 2 years, and wasn't sure I remembered how to do it all. I was going to let her see me first. She came in at the usual time the next night. 12 minutes past midnight. Rain on the glass, the bell over the door, the scuff of her shoes on the floor I'd mopped an hour before for nobody but her. I had the coffee already poured. That was new. I'd never had it ready before she sat down, but I'd been standing at the counter since 11, turning it over, losing my nerve and finding it again, and pouring the coffee early was the first small thing I did to keep from backing out. A man who's poured the coffee can't pretend he wasn't waiting. She sat in the third chair. The sweat came into her lap, the way it always did. She looked at the mug I'd already set down, and then she looked at me, and something in her face changed, just a little, because the order was wrong. I always poured after. Tonight I'd poured before. She noticed. She noticed everything, same as me. Two people who'd spent a whole spring reading each other in the dark. "You're up to something," she said. "I am." She wrapped both hands around the mug and waited. She didn't reach for the seam of the sweater. She just held the coffee and watched me, careful, the way you watch weather you can't read yet. I came out from behind the counter. I'd never done that either, not in the middle of a night, not with the room running. I pulled the second folding chair off the wall, and I set it down at the fold table across from her, and I sat, close, in it now. No counter between us, no clean reasons left. "I've been giving you the quiet," I said, "every night, since the first cup. I thought that was the kind thing. You came in carrying something, and I figured the best thing I could do was not poke at it. give you a warm drink and a square of light, and leave you alone inside it. She didn't say anything. The machines hummed behind me. And it was kind for a while, I said, but I don't think it's kind anymore. I think now it's just me hiding. Behind the coffee, behind the counter, letting you do all the bleeding while I stand back there safe and dry and never say a true word. Her thumb moved toward the sweater, stopped, came back to the mug. So I'm going to stop, I said. I'm going to say a true thing, and I'm not going to make you say one back. You don't owe me anything for it. I just can't keep trading you silence and calling it a gift. Daniel, just my name, quiet. Let me get through it, I said. I'll lose my nerve. She closed her mouth. She nodded once. I looked at my hands on the table. It's easier to say the true things to your own hands. I told you I was divorced. That first real night, I said it like a fact, like a date on a form. Claire, 2 years ago. I turned the salt shaker a quarter turn on the table, set it back. What I didn't say is what the 2 years actually were. They weren't moving on. Everybody kept telling me I was moving on. Friends, my sister, the guy who does my taxes, said I was doing so well. And the whole time I was coming here at 2 in the morning and turning every machine on with no clothes in them, just to hear the building be full of something. I heard her breath change, small, like to my hands. This room is where I came so I wouldn't have to be in my apartment, where it was so quiet I could hear the fridge. I built it up after she left. New machines, the good detergent. Told myself it was a business, but it was never a business. It was a place to put a man who didn't know what to do with himself at night. I looked up at her then, made myself. I've been hiding in here for 2 years, same as you. I just had keys, so nobody noticed I was hiding. The rain came down the window. She was very still. Not the still of a person who's pulling back. The other kind. The kind where someone's holding so much they can't move it. That's the true thing, I said. I'm not lonely the way people think I'm lonely. I'm lonely the way you are. I found one room that doesn't ask me to be okay, and I've been living in it in the dark, and I was terrified that if I said one real word to the only person who ever sat in it with me, I'd lose the room and the person both. I let out a breath. So, there it is. That's me. That's the whole thing. For a long moment, she didn't say anything at all. Then she set the mug down, both hands, careful the way she set everything down, and she picked up the sweater off her lap and she held it, not the way she usually held it, low and hidden. She held it up a little, into the light, like she was finally letting me look. It was my mother's, she said. I didn't move. I'd known for weeks. But knowing and being told are two different rooms, and she was opening the second one now, with her own hands, and the only right thing to do was be quiet and let her. This whole place was hers, she said. 30 years. She had it 30 years. Not this one. The one that used to be here, before the management company, before they sold the block, before it was yours. Same 4 walls. Same corner. I grew up on that floor you mop. A small sound, almost a laugh, all the way at the bottom of her. I did my homework on the fold tables. I learned to count making change for the dryers. The hum you've got running right now. I learned to fall asleep to it before I could read. Her thumb found the darned elbow, pressed it. This time she let me see her do it. She darned this herself, the elbow, with thread that didn't quite match because she's matching thread was a swindle, and the dryers ate enough quarters already. The almost law again. Then it went out of her. She died in the spring. Last spring. A year ago, about. And I have not washed the sweater since because it's still. She stopped. Her jaw worked. It still smells like her, the detergent she used. Her. If I wash it, that's gone. There's no getting that back. So I don't wash it. I just carry it. I sat there and I didn't reach for her. Every part of me wanted to. I made my hands stay on the table. And I can't sleep at home, she said. My apartment. It's too quiet. It's that fridge quiet, you said. I lie there and the silence is so loud it's like she died all over again, every night, in the dark. She looked around the room, at the warm light, at the machines, at the rain on the glass. But here, the hum, the light, the way the whole place smells like clean and warm. Her eyes came back to me, bright now, but she didn't let them spill. Here she's not all the way gone. I come here and it's the one place left on earth where she still feels close. That's why I never run a machine. I don't need to wash anything. I just need to sit inside the only room where my mother still feels near. The hum filled the space where neither of us spoke. They want me to sell her stuff, she said. My brother, the unit, what's left of her things, the storage. He says it's morbid, says I'm not letting her go. Her hand flattened on the sweater. He doesn't get that I'm not trying to let her go. Letting her go isn't the goal. Keeping her, that's the goal. Keeping a piece of her I can still hold. He thinks there's a date you're supposed to be done by, and I'm past it, and I'm making everybody uncomfortable by still being sad in public. Her mouth went hard. But you don't move on from your mother. You make room to carry her. There's a difference. Nobody in my family can see the difference. I see it, I said. She looked at me. I see it, I said again. I've got the same thing in a different shape. You've got a sweater, I've got a room. We're both carrying somebody, and the whole world keeps telling us to put it down. I shook my head. I'm not going to tell you to put it down. That's when she cried, not loud. She didn't fall apart. A few slow ones, down her face, and she didn't wipe them, and she didn't apologize for them, and she didn't look away from me while she did it. She just let me see. After a whole spring of letting me see nothing, she sat there in her mother's laundromat and let me see all of it. Okay, I said soft, okay. We sat with it, the rain, the hum. I didn't fix anything, because there was nothing fit to fix. Some things you just have to be in the room for, so I was in the room. After a while she breathed out, long like setting down a weight she'd carried so far up the stairs her arms had forgotten how to be empty. I have to tell you something too, I said. And it's bad timing, and I almost didn't, but you just trusted me with the whole thing, so I'm not going to keep one back. I pulled the envelope out of my back pocket. It had gone soft from being folded so long. I set it on the table between us. The rent's going up in the fall. A lot. The company that owns the block. My lease is up and they want a number I can't make selling wash cycles 2 quarters at a time. I might lose it. The room I've known for 2 weeks. I didn't know how to tell you that the one place your mother still feels near was already half gone. She looked at the envelope. She didn't pick it up. She put her hand on it, flat, the same way she put her hand on the sweater. How much? She said. Enough that I've been doing the math at 3 in the morning and the math doesn't work. She was quiet. Then she did something I didn't expect. She almost smiled, tired and wet and real. My mother kept this place alive for 30 years on nothing, she said. 30 years. There were stretches she paid the electric and skipped her own. She never once made a number that should have worked. She tapped the envelope. I know that storage unit my brother wants me to clear. I know what's in it. There's a little money she left. Not a lot. He wants to split it and be done. I kept saying no because splitting it felt like the end. Viv, I'm not telling you this so you'll. I know you're not. She looked at me steady. That's why I can. If you'd come at me asking, I'd have walked. You told me because you weren't going to keep a true thing back from me anymore. So now I get to decide what true thing. She left her hand envelope. I'm not handing you a rescue. I don't have a rescue. But I'm not letting her room close in the fall while I sit on the only thing that might keep it open. That's not a grand gesture. That's just 2 people not letting the daylight have the last word. I didn't trust my voice for a second. I can't ask you to put your mother's money into my floundering laundromat. It's not your laundromat, she said. It was hers, and it's been ours since about the 2nd cup of coffee. You said so yourself. She finally took her hand off the envelope. We'll do the math together. At 3 in the morning, since neither of us sleeps anyway, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and I help you find a new corner and we move the hum somewhere else. But we're not strangers about it. I'm done being strangers with you. Me too, I said. God, me too. That was the whole resolution. No music swell. No keys to a new building. No check that fixed everything. Just 2 people deciding to stop being separate in the dark and do the hard arithmetic side by side. She didn't need me to save her mother's room. I didn't need her to save my hiding place. We needed to stop sitting in it alone. Mara called me 2 days later. I almost didn't pick up. I was up to my elbows in a broken dryer, but I did. I didn't call it off, she said. No hello, my sister. I set down the wrench. Yeah? I went home like you said. I looked at him, and I asked myself what I was actually scared of. A pause. It wasn't the seating chart, the whole SME. The parts I don't show at work, and I kept thinking, if I let him have all of it, I can lose all of it. Her voice did something, and then I thought about you, on the phone, talking about which side of the door you've been living on, and I thought I am not going to be a Reed who dies on the safe side of the door. I leaned against the dryer and I closed my eyes. So I told him, she said, all of it. The scared part, the part where I almost ran. He just held my hand and said he already knew and he was still here. She laughed wet. Being known didn't kill me, Daniel. Turns out it's the only thing that doesn't. Yeah, I said, turns out. You took your own advice yet? I looked out through the front glass. The rain had stopped. The street was wet and shining under the one good street light. Hartley Street, quiet at the edge of dawn. Working on it, I said. I'm working on it. She let me have that. We're getting better at letting each other have things, my sister and me. Here's what I know now. Standing in a room that might still close in the fall and might not, with a woman who's going to help me do the math either way. I spent 2 years thinking the brave thing was to keep the door shut, keep the wound mine, keep the room mine. Never let anybody close enough to take anything, because if they can't get in, they can't leave, and if they can't leave, they can't hurt you. That's not courage. I had it backwards the whole time. The door shut isn't safe. It's just lonely with better lighting. The brave thing was the hard thing. To pull the chair out from behind the counter. To set the true thing on the table and not run. To let somebody see the actual you, the hiding, the wound, the room you built, so you wouldn't have to be alone with the quiet. And to let them carry their thing in plain sight too, the sweater they'll never wash, the mother they'll never put down, without telling them there's a date by which they're supposed to be done. She still comes at midnight. She still doesn't run a machine. The sweater's still in her lap, but now I sit in the second chair, and we do the math. And sometimes we just sit in the hum and don't say anything at all, and it's not silence I'm hiding behind anymore. It's the quiet of two people who finally stopped being strangers. So let me ask you something, before you go. Have you ever built a room like that? A place, or a habit, or a wall, that you told yourself was keeping you safe, when really it was just keeping you alone? And is there somebody standing close enough that if you open the door, they might actually come in? If this story stayed with you, there are more like it on the channel. Come sit in the quiet with us a while.